Hi, I'm Dr. Dawn McBride, and I'm a professor at Illinois State University. I'm going to discuss with you some important aspects of memory and how it works. In particular, I'll be talking about how does memory work, what is its purpose in our lives, what are the different processes that contribute to memory, how are memories stored, what are the different kinds of memories that we have, how do we retrieve our memories, how do procedural memories differ from other forms of memory? And how can you improve your memory? Memory is involved in so many different aspects of our lives. We also often make important assumptions that might be incorrect about how our memories should work well, when in fact they often don't. So it's important to understand how memory operates and just how accurate we can expect it to be in different situations. So let's start with how memory actually operates. How does it work? Memory retrieval is actually a reconstructive process that can be inaccurate. It doesn't really work like a video camera where you walk around recording every event exactly as it occurs in your memory. In fact, you encode different pieces of what you're experiencing in different areas of your brain. And then when you try to remember something, all of those pieces get put back together, almost as if you're trying to create a puzzle, trying to put the pieces all back together to create a single image that would be reflected on the puzzle that's complete. So what are the different processes that contribute to memory? Memory is actually made up of three important processes: encoding, storage, and retrieval. Encoding is the process of bringing information into memory. Okay, so it's when we actually experience something, bringing it into our minds so that we can actually encode it within our memories for later retrieval. Storage, the second process, is how we hold information in our memory over time. And storage might occur over a very short period of time, like I need to remember to call my husband in 10 minutes. So that's a very short period of time to store that intention. Or it could be over a long period of time. Like if I think back to high school many, many years ago for me now, I might be able to remember my Spanish training and some of the Spanish words that I learned there. And then the third process is retrieval. That's actually bringing information back out of memory. So when I want to try to remember the Spanish word for shoe, or I want to remember that I need to call my husband at a particular time, then I might retrieve those memories back out. And that's the process of retrieval. How are memories actually stored? Memories are in fact stored in many different brain areas, with an area known as the hippocampus playing a key role in both storing them correctly and then putting the pieces back together during retrieval. In fact, the different pieces of our experiences get stored in different areas of our brain. So pieces about the visual aspects of our experiences get stored in a visual area of the brain. Tactile information, motor information about our experiences gets stored in a different area, and so forth. It depends on the kind of information that's being stored in terms of where it actually goes in the brain. So you can't actually point to a single spot in your brain and say, that's where my memory for breakfast is. It doesn't work that way. In fact, your memory for breakfast is in lots of different parts of your brain, depending on the smell of your breakfast, the visual aspects of your breakfast, how it tasted, how you felt at breakfast, and so forth. There are in fact three types of memory stores: sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. And they each store information for different amounts of time and store it in different ways. Sensory memory is a very short storage of raw sensory information. So what we feel, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, all of that raw sensory information gets stored for a very short period of time in sensory memory. Almost kind of like if it's visual information, like an after image. It very quickly decays out of memory unless we pay attention to it. And in fact, that's the information that goes into short-term memory. It's a storage of information that we are currently attending to, and is sometimes also called working memory. So that's a short-term storage of information that allows us to quickly access it for any task that we're currently doing that we need that information for. And then there's long-term memory. This is the storage of information for an indefinite period of time. In fact, you can store memories from your earliest times in childhood if in fact they were encoded well in your long-term memory. So long-term memory does not have any kind of length limit on how long information can be stored there. The only problem is being able to retrieve it accurately out of long-term memory. And that's why we sometimes have memory failures for things we're trying to remember out of long-term memory. Not because the information isn't there anymore, but because we usually are not able to put the pieces back together accurately. So what are the different kinds of memories that we have? There are three different kinds of memory stored in long-term memory: episodic, semantic, and procedural memories. Episodic memories are the kinds of memories we have for particular events or experiences in our lives. So my memory of sitting down and having breakfast this morning, that is an episodic memory. I can remember that particular episode in my life, and it's stored in my long-term memory. Semantic memories are memories for facts or knowledge we have. So remembering that the capital of the United States is Washington, D.C., or that 2 plus 2 is 4, those are semantic memories. They're the facts and knowledge that I've stored throughout my life, but I don't have a particular episode or time connected to those memories that I remember when I learned that Washington, D.C. is the capital. Okay, that's just a not fact or that I have stored somewhere in my long-term memory that I can pull out when I need it, if in fact I'm successful at retrieving it. And then finally, we have procedural memories. These are memories for skills that we have. So how to drive a car, how to ride a bike, how to do any of the kinds of skills or things that we typically do. And sometimes we think of procedural memories as more automatic than some of the other memories. We don't always intentionally retrieve those memories in the way that we retrieve episodic and semantic memories. So now let's talk then about how we do in fact retrieve our memories. The different ways that we can retrieve our memories are primarily through memory kinds of tasks that are known as free recall, cue recall, and recognition. Okay. These are the names that we've given to these tasks that we use typically in testing memory in research, but they correspond to the kinds of memory tasks that we do in our everyday lives as well. Okay. Free recall is when we are just thinking of something off the top of our head. We don't have any kind of cues to help us remember. It's just sort of, we're trying to retrieve a fact that we want to try to remember off the top of our head. So in a memory experiment, for example, if I showed you a list of words and then gave you a blank piece of paper and said, write down all the words you remember, that's free recall because I haven't given you any cues or anything to help you remember them. Cue recall is when I actually give you cues. Okay, so if I were in that memory experiment, I showed you words and I said, okay, write down all of the flowers that you remember. Okay, now remember all the fruits and write those down. Or if I said, what's the capital of the United States? Starts with a W. That's a cue to help you remember. So that's considered cue recall. And then finally, there's recognition, where you look at something and decide whether it's something that you remember or not. So if I showed you those words in a memory experiment and then I showed you a bunch of words later and said, pick out the ones that you remember studying earlier, that's a recognition test. And we do recognition all the time where we look at people and say, oh, I recognize that person. I may not remember where I know that person from, but I do recognize them as somebody that I know. So how do procedural memories differ from other forms of memory? I kind of mentioned that procedural memories are thought of more as kind of automatic. And that's in fact the primary difference between procedural memories and episodic and semantic memories. Episodic and semantic memories are ones that we would typically intentionally retrieve. So you're answering a question that someone asked you by retrieving an episodic or semantic memory, like what's 2 plus 2? And come up with 4. Or if someone asked you, what's the capital of the United States? And you come up with Washington, D.C. Or what did you have for breakfast? And you come up with frosted mini wheats, which is what I had for breakfast today. Procedural memories, on the other hand, are more automatic. So when I go to drive my car, I don't sit in the car and think, what's the first thing I have to do to drive the car? And what's the second thing? And go through all of this intentional retrieval for that kind of skill or process. Okay. In fact, it's pretty automatic. I just get in my car and I'm usually thinking about something else and I just drive. It becomes sort of automatic. I'm pulling those memories of how to do that out of my long-term memory pretty automatically, unintentionally. And in fact, there are different brain areas that are important for episodic, semantic, and procedural memories. I mentioned that the hippocampus is an important area for both storing and retrieving memories. That area is primarily important for intentional memories, episodic and semantic memories, and in fact, there are different brain areas that control our procedural memories than our episodic and semantic memories. How can I improve my memory? How can you improve your memory? Well, there are some things that you can do that will always help you remember something a little bit better. Okay. It's not foolproof. You do have to put effort into it. So there are always things that you can do to help you remember better. First, if you connect information to what you already know about a topic, it's going to help you store it better in long-term memory and then have more pieces to help you retrieve it back out of long-term memory when you go to try to remember it. So anytime you're trying to remember something new, thinking about what you already know about that topic or what's it's connected to that you already know is going to help you. Thinking about what the information means is also going to be helpful. And that's part of connecting that information to what you already know. If you think about what the information is, what its topic is, what it's about, then that can help you connect it to things that you already know. But it also helps you encode it a little bit better when you're thinking about what something means. You're doing some additional processing with that information when you think about what it means, and that can help it get encoded just a little bit better in your memory. Using imagery, using images, thinking about what something looks like, especially if it's meaningless information you're trying to remember. Thinking about an image that's related to it or coming up with an image that involves that information can make it meaningful, and that can help you encode it more. In fact, coming up with some very strange images of things can really help you remember it really well, because the stranger the image, the better it's going to be encoded and the better you'll remember it. Practicing remembering. If you want to remember something, practicing retrieving it, giving yourself little tests, trying to think about what you remember, those are things that are going to help you retrieve it again later. It's going to make that retrieval stronger later on. And then finally, getting enough sleep. Okay, doing the all-nighter thing before a test is really not going to help you because, in fact, there are processes that occur in your brain while you're sleeping that help your memories become stronger and make them more likely to be remembered later. So getting enough sleep is an important process, actually, in the storage of memories. So let's summarize what we've covered in this tutorial. First of all, memory is reconstructive. It doesn't work like a video camera. We can't go around in our everyday lives just recording the experiences we have exactly as they occur. In fact, what we have to do when we remember something is put the different pieces of our memories back together, and sometimes we don't quite get that right, which is why our memories are sometimes inaccurate. Encoding, storage, and retrieval are the three primary processes of memory: bringing in information and encoding, holding it in memory and storage, and then retrieving the information back out of memory when we want to remember something we have stored there. Memory storage is in fact distributed. It doesn't happen just in one part of the brain. We can't point to a section of our brain that has a particular memory in it. In fact, there are lots of sections of our brain storing the pieces of any particular memory that we've got stored there. Episodic, semantic, and procedural memories are all held in long-term memory, three different types of memories that are held there. Episodic and semantic memories are the intentional memories, so we can retrieve memories intentionally if they are episodic and semantic, or we can retrieve them unintentionally. And this is typically the procedural memories, the skills, knowledge we have about how to do things that we often just pull out automatically. And that's how procedural memories actually are different from episodic and semantic memories. They typically involve automatic retrieval. Okay, we don't intentionally try to retrieve them. Things like driving a car, riding a bike, those are things that we just do. They're automatic. And then finally, we talked about how to improve memory. Making information meaningful, practicing retrieving, and in fact, getting sleep can help you improve your memory when you're trying to remember some important information, like things you have to study for a test in one of your classes.